Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our panel of Achieving Financial Independence through Game Audio and VGM. And this panel will hopefully teach you how to earn money with music, basically. So yeah,
Please
let's
teach me.
start. Here are the panelists. Please introduce yourself and what it is you do.
I'm Emmanuel Agumbai. I do sound design a lot more now. I started out as a composer, and I also do other things like audio editing, VO design. As you can see on there, I'm currently working on Torchlight Frontiers, doing some contract sound design for them. I worked on a game called Miracle Mia, along with a couple other people on this panel. Ventureverse is my big title that I've mostly done a lot of work for, and a couple other things here and there. So some productions from Materia Collective as well. We'll talk more about that, I'm sure.
Feeling all intimidated now. Okay. I am Sonic Buster. I am a producer, arranger, and lyricist, vocalist, and voice actress, and organizer, and yeah, I do stuff.
The things and the stuff.
Nice to meet you.
Hello. Sorry.
My name is John Robert Matz. I'm a composer, I'm a voice actor, I'm a brass player as well and a vocalist. I kind of do a little bit of everything. I've worked on a handful of different games in the course of my career. Been at this for a bit of time, and I am thrilled to talk to you all about that in a little bit.
Nice. Hello, everyone. My name is Diwa, or String Player Gamer from YouTube. This is my first panel, to be honest, in MAGFest. And I do mostly video game covers, but I was from the Philippines. I just moved to the US like last year, but in the Philippines, I was a film scorer, a film composer. And now I'm a full-time YouTube content creator, and I've worked on some video game titles as well, Miracle Mia, like E-Man and Ashley. Yeah, that's the three of us were working on Miracle Mia by our friend here, Donald.
You can play it downstairs.
You can play it downstairs right now. Basically, it's tennis and then aliens. Okay. Anyway, we're going to talk about financial independence through game audio and VGM. And we're going to start with a bit of our origin story. So let's start with Emmanuel.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I started in game audio probably about 5 years ago now. Oh no, 6, because it's 2019. Happy New Year. My first conference was Game Sound Con 2013, and that's when I just started meeting folks and getting to know everybody. And then over time, I started out as a composer then. I was still in school. Not the best school for kind of audio. I don't know how many of you guys have experienced that, where you're going to school that has no real audio production classes or courses, zero information on game audio. That was my background. So I am more than happy to chat about that experience with you guys, and we can rant together. After that, I started getting into sound design probably in the last 2 or 3 years, and that's kind of the path I'm moving toward more now, in-game audio. And yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that journey, I think, more.
Yeah. Thank you, Eman. Let's move to Sonic Buster.
How did I get into game audio? Okay, well that's actually like a really long story, so I'm gonna try and give you like the cliff notes, like just the important bits. So I started making connections in like 2011, 2012 at a couple of different events. I was starting a master's in ethnomusicology and doing a lot of conventions by way of doing press and doing interviews with different artists and stuff like that. And that's how I got hooked into MAGFest. So after that year, I became homeless, and it was at that point just looking at everything going, well, I have nothing to lose, so I started working on music production. I sought out a mentor and sent out hundreds of emails to composers that I looked up to, and lots of composers that I had no idea who they were. but they were really good. So I sent them an email. And one of the composers, who I didn't know at all, but he was really good, messaged me back and go, "What are you looking for?" Just a little bit of feedback on my compositions. I'll send you an email and you can go, "This sucks, fix this," and that would be great. So we did that for 4 years. I've been in music production now for 5 or 6 years. So since about 13, 14, 15, 16, 7 years. So for 7 years now, professionally for 6. So I got into game audio. Actually, were any of you in here for the last panel? Anybody? Yeah, we're in here for the last panel? You're awesome. Mega Ran, actually, I met at a convention up in Pittsburgh called TakoshaCon. And he was like, "You should come to MAGFest." So I came to MAGFest and met a bunch of people. And that's how I got into game audio, because I've done music. I went to college for it and had a kind of useless degree towards it. And yeah, just kind of fell into it. Like, oh, I could do game audio. I would love doing game audio. I love writing, and I love games. And I like coming up with like themes for stories. So like, why didn't I put this together before? That's how that happened.
So my background is a little bit different. I went to school for music education. I was going to be a band director or a choir director. Work in middle school, high school. That was my original goal. Literally the week I graduated, student taught. I loved it. It was a heck of a lot of work. But during my college career, I had a chance to get to write some stuff. I'd always been writing music and writing. A friend of mine was a filmmaker, made like fan films and stuff, and I scored those. And so I kind of really gotten bitten by the composition bug. And I figured I'd write music, on the side while I was teaching. I had a very close mentor, in school, who was a fantastic band director and also did a lot of arranging. And so I thought, he could do that. I could probably do the same thing. When I got out of school, major kind of life change happened. I lost my dad like 5 days after I graduated, very unexpectedly, and did not, at the same time, could not find a full-time teaching job. And so I wound up teaching as an adjunct faculty person at a high school, doing voice and teaching brass instrument tech and stuff like that, and then began to dabble again in composing. And I wound up finding a weird little game, which was actually the first game I wound up scoring. Is a game called Artemis, the Spaceship Bridge Simulator, which is actually being played here, apparently. They have it's a huge like fan favorite thing, a weird cult classic. It is a crazy game that if you ever watched a single episode of Star Trek, you know how this works. Everyone has a bridge station. You have tactical and helm and communications and science and engineering stations, and one guy's the captain, and he or she just shouts orders, usually drunkenly, because this is how these game nights go, at everyone else on the bridge crew, and tells them what to do. And everyone has their own computer, and then one computer's running the main view screen, and it's a very intense, absurd, like role-playing game experience. It's a wonderful thing. And the developer for the game at the time had released it and was doing a demo, like if you made a video, because this is a game that does not show well. Like it is, the actual computer screens are just displaying basically like radar displays and knobs and sliders. So it doesn't show well. So he put out the word to get more interest in this. He made a demo for his game. That was like one scenario. And if you make a video and put it on YouTube of you and your friends playing the game, he'll give you a free copy of the game. And a lot of people have been doing this. And I realized that like this, first of all, it sounded like a really cool game, but it had no music in it, which is curious, because most of the time when games are out, even in what this was before early access was a thing, they usually have audio. They usually have music at the very least. Like this had some rudimentary sound design, but no music. And so everyone was making these videos and like dubbing in Star Wars scores or Star Trek scores, and or like just like EDM music for some reason, I don't know. And I was like, okay, I can do something here. And so I got a terrible idea. I figured I'll just use some music that I've written for a project that my sister is a film major, so she was working on a school project. I'm like, I can use this 2 minutes of music to score this 7-minute thing. No, I wound up writing like 7.5, 9 minutes of music, something like that, for this film. That was me and my cousins in our basement, elaborately, dramatically playing this game. And then I wrote the developer an email, because you're supposed to email him and say, hey, I did this. You could send me my free copy of the game. And I said, hey, I did this. Also, I noticed you don't have music. If you like what you hear here, I wrote this for this. So what do you think? And he said, this sounds great. I would love to work with you. And so that's how I started writing video game music. That was my first game. My second game was a game called Gunpoint, which was BAFTA nominated and did a whole bunch of other nonsense. Nice. And another fluke out of left field thing. And I've been writing music for games and doing things for games for 8 years now, something like that, maybe 9. I don't know how dates work. I first released my Artemis score at the end of 2011, but I was working on it in like 2010. So.
I just want to add really quick. When I found out that he scored Gunpoint, I like lost my mind, because I sat next to him at GDC and like, oh yeah, what have you been working on? He's like, oh, I worked on Gunpoint. I was like, because that was the coolest thing for me. Yeah, it was like that was 5 years ago, man, 6 years ago.
It's a really good score. I can say that because I only did like a tiny fraction of it. It was 3 composers, me, Ryan Ike, and Francisco Cerda, who did amazing bits as well, but my stuff is like the main theme you hear at the very beginning and the end of the game. So it's a fun game. It's a really good game. Sir?
Nice. Thank you, John. So my origin story is, it's usually when your parents encourage you to study in college, they usually tell you to, be a doctor, be a lawyer. But my case is so much different, because my family is actually a musical family from the Philippines, and my grandfather is like a famous composer in his time. So I was actually forced to become a musician. And I was so rebellious that I actually wanted to be a painter. I was like, no, Dad, I'm not going to be a musician. I'm going to be a painter. But, I took fine arts a bit for 1 year in college. But I was already like enamored with Mario Brothers and Atari games in my day. And you know what? In that time, I was already doing music commissions. What the hell am I doing in fine arts? Why am I still dreaming to be a painter when I'm already doing all these music gigs on the side? So I just, you know what? My dad, my mom, they're all right. I'm meant to be a musician. So I just, I embraced it. And I shifted to music in college. I finished a composition degree, and my first job was actually as a MIDI arranger for a ringtone company. But that was the time when I was first introduced to music software, the DAW, the Digital Audio Workstation. I was using Sonar, but unfortunately,
I wrote Artemis in Sonar. Sonar works.
Yes.
I own Sonar. I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the company had to downsize, so I was a new employee. I was let go right away. But I tried to see the silver lining. Oh, now I know how to do music production software. Maybe I can learn Logic Pro after learning Sonar. It's like transferring from Windows to Mac right away, and I never used Mac in my life. So I did what everyone in 2012 or 2010 does, which is watch YouTube tutorials. And that's how I started into music production. Eventually, I discovered YouTube. Why don't I just combine my passion for gaming and music and see what happens? And now, I'm a full-time YouTube content creator doing video game music covers with my electric violin. And I also did music scoring for films in the Philippines for 20 years. But now I'm more enjoying video game covers on YouTube. So that's it. That's my origin story. Okay, let's move on to the next question, which is, How long did it take you to reach some semblance of musical independence through game audio, and do you actually feel financially independent? Let's start with
Oh,
Emmanuel.
God. Okay, 5 years. So about when I started, it's taken me about 5 years to finally get going, and that's just because the amount of building relationships that you have to do to be able to sustain yourself and be visible to people and constantly attending these events and all that kind of stuff takes about that long. You know, it's not gonna happen overnight unless you just happen to get lucky and something, really goes well. Realistically, it took me, again, about 5 years to find some stability. And I'm gonna say absolutely not like that I feel completely stable in game audio because it's not a stable field. It's just the reality of it is, you're gonna make money 1 month and then you're probably not gonna see anything for a few months, and then you'll make great money another month, and then it'll be the same repeating thing. That's I think the realistic overview of what game audio is. That said, there are people that make great money every month, but they've worked very hard to get to that point. So it does take time, and it's just a lot of patience.
To achieve financial independence, so this is where my long story comes in. All right, here we go. So as I mentioned before, when I started doing music production, I was homeless. So I started with literally nothing and nothing to lose. It's taken me about as long as I've been doing this, so about 6 years to achieve some level of financial independence. It took me three years, and I got my first royalty, and it was like $1. And I was so excited. I have pictures to this day. I have pictures. I'm like, I made $1 with my music. That's the most I've ever made in my life. And then the next year, I made like $60. And I was like, my mind is just, I didn't see this happening. Okay, so this year, and I still have to do the paperwork for this because this just happened this year, is I have made enough to officially call what I do a self-employed business. So I've made, by at least by the state that I'm in Virginia, if you make $1,000 a year, you have to register as a business. So I have made at least $1,000 this year for the first time in my life with my music. Now, achieving financial independence, as far as where I'm at right now, my music work and combined with other things that I have that I do that are tangentially related. I primarily do music production for games. I create original albums and cover video game covers, and I live stream on Twitch regularly. So by combination of all of these things, I am finally achieved some level of financial independence there.
Much like Sonic Buster here, I very much have done the thing where you have multiple gigs, multiple jobs. The teaching position that I got out of college, I still teach there. It's wonderful. My students are fantastic. I get to work with these incredibly talented and driven high school kids, and that's like 2 days a week I spend doing that. The rest of the time, though, I do a little bit of church musician stuff. I do a little bit of voice acting, actually more of that now than ever. A lot of actually playing brass and recording vocals for other composers, which is kind of awesome. It's something that you can kind of do on the side once you have a good recording setup. And then probably 60% to 70% of my income is from video game audio. And that's been something that has taken probably, I don't know, it's been a process because like Emmanuel said, it's very up and down. Like sometimes, when I first started out, Artemis made almost nothing. Gunpoint, my second game, I got paid nothing up front, and I made a very, very small royalty. Because that game was obscenely successful, that was more money than I think I have made per amount of music written than anything else I've ever done on that one project, and that was entirely revenue share. But now it's much more stable kind of thing. I get a reasonable amount of money up front for projects, and I get usually I can get some kind of revenue share on the back end, and that works out very nicely. But it's been a process to get to this point, and it's very up and down. So probably how long has it been taken? I would say at least like 4 or 5 years. And sometimes you do things like I worked on a game a year ago that was incredibly critically acclaimed and sold no copies. And it was very much a passion project, and I made very, very little money on it. And that was just like, sometimes it's a wash. But other times you do something that is incredibly successful or quietly very successful and doesn't get as much acclaim, but hundreds of thousands of people are playing it, and that's super cool too. So I'd say, like 5 years, 4 years, 5 years, something like that.
Nice. Yeah, my first big break from the Philippines was when they did a Philippine version of Survivor. And because I was a specialist in so-called Philippine traditional music at that time, I was kind of recommended by friends, and that was my big break. That was like 2008, and that was the first time I actually earned a significant amount in film music composing and TV music scoring. But I was in the Philippines at that time, and in the Philippines, the living expenses are like 7 to 10 times lower than America. But also the living wage, the money that you earn is also 7 to 10 times lower than the Philippines. I was earning nicely from music score commissions from a Philippine standpoint. But I was doing that for like almost 7 years, doing Philippine commissions for Philippine film scoring. But at the same time, in between those, I was already trying to build up my YouTube channel, and my first earning, I can still remember to the day, the first time I became a YouTube partner, my first earning was 0.3 cents. Woo! And I was like, yes, I'm a legit YouTube creator. And in between those times, I was doing film commissions in the Philippines, but I was steadily building up my YouTube channel and just never giving up, just uploading videos, and I'm taking requests from my subscribers and like doing Mario, Zelda covers, and until maybe around 2013, 2014, I finally saw that my YouTube earnings just overtook whatever I was earning in film scoring, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna chill down on film scoring and focus more on YouTube. And eventually, I focused more and more on YouTube until like 2016 to 2017. That is when I finally said, okay, I'm going to be a full-time YouTube creator. Screw film scoring. Not really. I still accept some film scoring on the side, but the good thing about it is I can finally pick and choose the scripts that I want. And film scoring is actually still kind of a chill job because you've given like 2 hours of a video and you put anything you want. If the director doesn't want it, you can just do something else. But it's more like you're given a lot of freedom in terms of the creative output. But around that time, so I would say around 8 to 10 years before I finally felt that, oh yes, this is the living wage that I want. I'm going to move to America now because this is like what they would call at that time minimum wage in America. So in 2017, I migrated to the US, and now here I am with all of you guys. Yeah. And the next, yeah, thank you. So, okay, this is kind of up to you if you really want to reveal the numbers, but how much do you earn annually, ballpark, through game audio, and what aspect of game audio is your main source of income? Is it like composition, arrangement, or sound design? And how many hours a day do you work?
Whew.
Emmanuel.
Oh my gosh, okay. So, annually speaking, I'm actually working 4 different jobs right now. 1 full-time job as something completely unrelated to game audio, but 3 jobs completely related to game audio. And the reason I chose to do that was because I recently moved. My girlfriend is getting her master's degree in a completely different state now, so we moved over there. And
yeah, question, but before you got that non-game audio related job, how many years were you working just full-time?
Oh, geez. I was working about 3 or 4 3 or 4 years just full-time audio. And in that time, I made anywhere from $8,000 a year to $25,000 a year to $30,000 a year. It really varied depending on year to year. I would say percentage-wise, mostly what I would do is sound design. Like 85% now is sound design by choice. Before it was about 75% music, 10% this, 10% that, so on and so forth. But I've moved to sound design mostly because I find that more financially stable for me at this point. And also because I'm enjoying it quite a bit. And we'll talk about real jobs, I think, closer to the end there. Because I think that's an important topic to touch on too.
Yeah. Ashley?
Okay. So, let's see. 2015 was a pretty big year for me. I have a kid. He's 4 years old now. So he was born in 2015. I joined Materia Collective in 2015. We released the first Materia Collective album in 2016, technically, and Chronicles of Time and all of that. And I ended up on all of these different projects at the same time. And I, at the time, was very new to the community in general. And I'm like, I have no idea why they let me in. I have no idea how I got here, but I'm gonna stay. So that was kind of my first real push into doing video game audio. Doing covers, and they like published my stuff. Like, who does that? Anyway, so real jobs. So let's see. 2013, okay, so 2013, I was homeless, and then after that, I worked on the anime and gaming convention circuit for 3 years until my son was born. I made a lot of connections. I did a ton of networking during that time, and I did a lot of practicing, and I worked on like 2 or 3 major projects, but I worked on them constantly. So I did that for a while. After being with Materia Collective, I met, I know I sound kind of rambly, I'm sorry. I met a lot of different people, made a lot of different connections, went to a lot of different conventions at the same time. It was very overwhelming. 2016, it was still 2015, I'm sorry. I started working teaching English as a second language to Korean executives and college students. So I did that, and I would work like 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. and then like 4 p.m. to like 8 or 9 p.m. depending on time of year, kind of a thing. And then at 9:30, I did streaming. So I would work in the morning and then in the evening, and then after that, I would stream music production or gaming until 2, 3 a.m. and just continued to work on projects that way. And so in 2016, when all of these different albums came out, and I met Donald, sorry. I met Donald, and I started working on Miracle Mia, which we mentioned earlier, doing game audio for that. Now, previously, I had done work on a couple of projects. Like a girl would contact me, and she's like, oh, I'm making this really great game. You want to do the music for it? And I was like, yeah, I want to do the music for it. Wrote the music, never released, never saw the light of day. First of all, that's a very, very super common thing. So somebody else came along and was like, I'm making a YouTube channel. Can you do the music for my YouTube channel? I was like, oh, yeah, I can definitely do that. Made the music for the YouTube channel. And never saw the light of day. So things went on like that. And then all of a sudden, I found myself working on more and more games. But really, for me, my focus has become, I really love working on games, but has become doing stuff on Twitch, talking to other composers and things like that. So what I do on Twitch is I do music production live, and I do feedback for other composers. So like they'll send me their work, and I'll say, oh, it needs this in like EQ, or like in your songwriting, you could do this to achieve this mood more so, for all different kinds of genres and things like that. And that, I think, is really where I've hit my stride. Because as far as making money off of video game music, I probably make anywhere between $20 to $60 a quarter, like a quarter of the year, which I understand is not super impressive. But it's something, and that does make me happy. But as far as Twitch, just being transparent, at this point, after streaming for 4 years, I've made between $300 and $500 this year, focusing more so on Twitch and helping other composers and working on my projects live has been probably the best thing. And for me, I'm definitely still work in progress. I don't feel like I've fully punched into my niche yet because I'm very scattered, if you can't tell by my responses. So just to clarify, I'm writing music for a couple of games. I do the Twitch streaming, and I do my own music as well as doing voice acting jobs here and there and writing lyrics for other composers and things like that. I feel like I'm rambling. Help me out here.
Okay, no, it's fine.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley.
Yeah. No, it's fine. It's a weird question, right? Because we want to talk about like how much do we make annually doing game audio, and it becomes very, very difficult to kind of divorce that from like all of the other things. Because for me, like game audio is really important, but also film music is a thing I do. And so it's like they all kind of like intertwine and become one thing, and it is very much something that is always a work in progress. Like right now, I am, obviously still supplementing my income with other musical sources, but it's probably in like the 35, 40,000 range. I am nowhere near as impressive, it was well off as some of my colleagues who are able to work on like bigger AAA projects and things like that. But I'm fortunate in that most of the things I have worked on have like revenue share agreements. And when something does work out well, you can do okay. It is something you have to diversify and have other things to support you when times are more lean, because sometimes things are great and sometimes they're not great. And when you do fun stuff like filling out government forms or like how much do you make a month, and you're like, this month I made $350. And you're like, wow. Next month I made $25,000, and you're like, that's it for the year.
What's your annual income?
So it's not just me.
No,
I'm up here. I'm like,
thing, right?
oh gosh, like I do this and I do this and I do that and I do this other thing, and it all kind of works out, but it's kind of.
I suspect what we'll find though is when we turn it over to Tiwa, you're gonna find you've got steady income from a lot of videos, right? And that's like a really nice thing. For a lot of us, it's you're working from job to job, and each one is a totally different like scope. I might work in an indie mobile game that has like 3 tracks, and it's like a $6,000 job, and you're done. And you walk out the door when you're done, and you say, hey, just send me a copy when you're done, whatever. Maybe you put together an album release, and then it's a small EP that's like 10 minutes of music, and you sell it for $1, and maybe you make $5 in that. And that's not a big deal. But then you might have something that's like 2 hours of music and pays much more substantially. Might be a $15,000 gig with the revenue share on the back end to kind of make it more tolerable, because a lot of indies don't have a lot of money. How many hours a day do I work? Is the other aspect of this. We haven't even talked. A lot. As many as humanly possible. Too many, probably.
Too many, John. Too many.
Definitely too many.
Is the general consensus that when are we not working might be a better question? When don't you work?
So this is the question. Do you count the time that you're composing in your head while you're washing dishes as working? Right?
Sometimes.
Do you only count the time you're sitting in front of your digital audio workstation putting notes on a page as the time spent? Like, because for me, it's like almost, if I'm conscious, I'm sort of working, unless I'm like watching a movie or something. But then I'm doing research, aren't I? So anyway, I'll pass the baton.
Yeah, thank you, John. So just to answer the question briefly, yeah, in 80, I think 80% of my income is coming from video game covers from YouTube, 20% from some film scoring projects and occasional live gigs. But mostly my main income is now from my YouTube channel, and a lot of those covers are available in Spotify or iTunes, so I get back-end royalties from all of those. And in 2017, I closed the year with around 45,000 in revenue. In 2018, just like last month, I closed the year with close to $60,000 in revenue. I work 2 hours a day, and the rest of the time I play video games.
I'm envious of you, sir. I'm envious of you.
Yeah.
In the interest of time, I think we can, like, if you have an important thing to jump in on something, go for it. Otherwise, like, if you don't have anything to comment, don't worry about it, because we want to make sure we have time to take your questions.
Absolutely, yes.
So I think this is gonna be the bread and butter question. What are the major steps you took to reach the level of independence that you already have right now?
Can I start with this one?
Yeah. Okay, John.
Cool. Rather than letting Emmanuel take the bullet every time. So what are the major steps that I took? The first is to do your due diligence and kind of do your research, but reach out to everyone you possibly can when you see a cool project. Like watch Twitter, read game websites, look for previews of things. Hashtag screenshot Saturday. Finding gigs is the hardest thing in the world, and if you can like search for that hashtag and find stuff early on when people are just beginning to share things, that can be incredibly useful. But then don't be the jerk that sends the email to the developer
Do you need a composer?
who was like, hey, do you need a composer? When they specifically had a big like press release about the composer that they signed.
Or they're the composer themselves.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's the best thing, because I've gotten stuff where it's like, oh, emails come in and like, I get this thing, the music in the trailer sounds very nice, you know, but if you want an original score, I'm like, okay, very nice, okay. Yeah, I wrote that, thank you. Also, you're writing to me, not the rest of the team. You haven't done your research. So do your research, know who you're reaching out to before you reach out. But reach out to people, have a backup plan. Like if this project falls through, don't be working on one thing. Work on like 3 things. Like it's gonna make you go a little bit crazy, but it will help when one of those things disintegrates and doesn't come out, because it happens. All right, and then on top of that, get paid up front, because if the thing disintegrates and doesn't come out, you want to make sure you're getting something out of it. You know, keep the rights to the music, maybe release it elsewhere, etc. But things like that. So, like apart from that, go to as many like music related or game audio or game development related events. GDC is incredibly expensive, but super great to meet other human beings who are in your industry. Game SoundCon is another thing out in Los Angeles. If you want to learn how to better your craft as a composer or a sound designer or a voice actor now, it is a tremendous place to meet other people and to kind of build on your skills. But also those people, the cool thing about game audio is you don't sound like anyone else. Actually, quick digression. Who here is a composer?
Nice.
How about sound designer?
Is like a musician and not really a composer. Okay, cool.
Any
cool.
online content creators as well? Nice.
We should have done this at the beginning if we were thinking about it.
Can I see sound designer hands?
Sound designers?
Okay.
Okay, cool. So some of these things will hit you stronger than others. All right, but yeah, like getting to events like MAGFest is great, but it's much more fan-oriented. So if you go to the more professional events, you're gonna have a chance to network and connect with other people. Don't network and connect with them with the intent of like, I'm gonna get a job from you today, sir. No, network and connect with them with the intent of, I'm gonna make a friend today. And then when you get to know me, maybe you'll hear some of my music down the line. Maybe you'll like me. Maybe we'll become friends, and maybe you'll bring me on your next project.
Can I pick up on that?
Go for it.
That is exactly what happened to me and Ventureverse. I met John at GDC 2014 and sat next to him, and again I geeked out when I heard he did Gunpoint. I'm like, oh wow, that's super cool. I love that score. It was a great game. And then we just kept talking, just chatting, and we became friends. And he at one point said, hey, you want to look into this one game? I think you might have something that you could do for it, because I think your style of music works for that. I don't have time to do it right now. Is that something you'd be interested in? And that ended up being my first major project that I've been working on. It's in early access now, and it's releasing full access in like the next couple of months. That's because I wasn't an ass to John when I met him. Like, I think
he is an ass now, but at the time, I'm kidding.
It took some warming up, right? But that's actually one big point. It's just when you meet people, make friends. Like everyone in this room is a potential friend that you can work with later down the line in some kind of caliber you don't know about. And the next thing is don't give up. Don't like the moment somebody stops is the moment they lose access to be able to keep going. I've had there were times I think with Torchlight Frontiers where I demoed for the project, and the first time I got around to it, I heard, yeah, your sound design was great, but we put it to a team vote. Despite me being the audio director and you being my #1 pick, team went with this person instead. But keep in touch. Then another demo came about, and I said, instead of going, well, I'm probably not going to make it, they didn't like my one the first time, or instead of saying, screw these guys, they didn't like my stuff, why should I do more work, why should I demo for them again? I demoed, and I got that gig, which led to a couple more, and then another one from the same project. So it just, don't give up. Like, the moment you say, I can't do this project, or, something doesn't feel right, that's when you kind of lose out the hope to even get a chance to do it.
Yeah, and to add up to that, and what I would say the major change that I made to myself is I started to force myself to think like a business-minded person, because most of us are artists, creatives. Oh, I don't need to learn business. I'm an artist. Blah blah blah. But no, that's not really how you should see yourself. If you really want to make your creative side as your full-time job, you have to learn some business skills. You have to research what are the top e-commerce trends right now. How are other musicians who are successful in their micro niches, how are they selling their music? Why is this guy who I've never heard, why does he have 500,000 subscribers, and why does he have 5,000 per month in Patreon? I've never heard of him. They made it work for themselves, but they were able to target their own micro niche, and you have to really Google that later, micro niche. It's very different than genre, and then there's niche, and then there's micro niche. You really have to look up that word, and it will really help you a lot. Anything to add, Ashley?
Yeah. As far as, let's see, major steps took you to reach this level of success. Okay, major steps. Networking, absolutely, through and through. If you look up to somebody, don't be afraid to talk to them. And yeah, I think this has already been iterated a bit, but treat them like a person. Like,
Nothing, Gary.
Sorry. What? Did I do something wrong?
No.
All right. So meet them, make a friend, learn something. If it's somebody that you admire, don't hesitate to say, hey, I admire your work. I would like to learn something like this. And sometimes they'll be like, oh, I'm glad you like my stuff. And other times they'll be like, oh, well, what you do. Those opportunities will come as you meet people. And once you meet one person, you'll meet 3 people, and then you'll meet 10 people, and then you'll meet 60 people, and then you'll meet like hundreds of people, and then you'll be like, oh, there are so many people, and it'll be really scary, but it's really fascinating. And then somebody will come and find you and be like, you're the guy, you're the person, and you'll be like, you know who I am.
You're that person from the internet.
It's a special moment. So special steps to get there. I networked like crazy for years before anybody even really saw any of my stuff. And then it almost feels like I woke up one day and like, how do I put this? I'm trying to think of how to put this well. It does have something to do with the way that you approach people. If you approach somebody and you just want something from them, they can feel that, even if that's not what you say. It's very important, I think, to get it in your mind that you want to make a friend, that you want to learn from other people. Because when you I mentioned earlier I had a mentor. I didn't just have a mentor, somebody that just went, oh, well, fix this. What I ended up with was somebody who's like, how's your family? How are you doing? Mm-hmm. oh, let me tell you this story about my kids and my wife. Oh, let me, do you want to hear this new thing that I'm working on? And it goes from being just a business relationship to being something very personal, which this industry has unique about it, I believe, is that people in it really care about each other. And if you only care about your work, you're not going to get very far, to be honest.
Yes. Thank you very much, Ashley. Okay, so just to speed things up, well, let's just maybe enumerate like the top 3 music expenses that we each have. So I'll start. My expenses are mostly licensing fees for video game covers, software purchases for instrument plugins, and most important, storage. If you're doing video production and audio production, you're gonna lose a lot of hard drive space so quickly. So I have backups of my backups and my backups, and I have cloud backups of my cloud backups. And I pay for all of those services because I'm really so paranoid. I don't want to lose any data. That's it.
For me, it is pretty much similar sorts of things. It's my workstation, sometimes new tech, working on VR stuff right now. So it's like, gotta try things out with a Vive. Yeah, that's an expense. It is, but it's also pretty darn cool. Things like that. So, on the other hand, like I'm always collecting instruments. And so you buy new instruments and add those to your arsenal, and pretty soon you've got a studio full of instruments, but they also cost something. So that sort of stuff on top of your subscriptions for Google Drive and Dropbox and backup services and extra hard drives and fun stuff like that. Anyone else? Expenses?
No, that's
Is that everything? Yeah, that sounds about
libraries and hiring musicians.
Oh yeah. That's
occasional hiring live musicians.
Yeah.
Okay, so the regular expenses, of course, mine would be rent and groceries most of the time. I always work from home and I don't need a car at the moment, so I do the occasional Uber ride. So mostly rent, groceries, and travel expenses to conventions sometimes. That's it.
Yeah, it's stuff like that. It's property taxes, yay, and food and like important stuff like that. Things that keep the lights on, pretty much, But that's about it.
Okay, so I mentioned earlier that I probably made a little over 1,000 this year. So you're probably wondering, well, how does she live? I am married. My husband works a full-time job. And largely, actually, we save money by me staying at home and taking care of my son because it would cost about as much for me to have a job as it does to take care of my kids. So,
because that would be someone else's job.
Because then it would be somebody else's job, and we have to pay. The math is stupid, to be honest.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So I am a stay-at-home mom. So as far as my overhead, it's shared with my husband. My husband takes care of our rent, our food, everything. So in my case, I'm able to focus on music after my son goes to bed. And that's actually how that's been for me. I'm very lucky there.
Nice.
I don't have much to add to that. Like, honestly, that's pretty much covers it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, maybe we'll skip the next question and proceed to the very last question, which is, what advice do you give to musicians striving to make a living wage from a musical, video game audio, or game audio career?
Like, don't be an ass. Is that one? That's one.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, that's pretty straight.
Thank you.
Well, that's sound. Just meet people, be like yourself, unless you're a terrible person, in which case be a better person.
Thank you.
And just and network. Like, don't be afraid to reach out, but do it in the most respectful, cool way possible.
Don't be afraid for help. Ask for help.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's the big thing. Like,
one of the amazing secret things about the game audio community is
they're
just
nice.
Everybody's so helpful.
Yeah.
Like you think, oh, they'll never help little old me. But the thing is people so often don't even bother to ask. They're like, oh, they'd never notice me. I'm like, they're not going to notice if you don't say anything.
And the weirder thing on top of that is, like, there are times when you'll talk to somebody that you look up to, and you'll be like, wait, why aren't they responding to me? And then they'll get back to you like a month later, like, sorry, I've just been swamped. And, it just happens that way. So if you do send a message out, don't pester them, obviously.
Yeah. Don't take it personally.
But yeah, don't take it personally.
They don't hate you, usually.
Right.
It's usually they haven't slept yet.
Yeah, right.
this month.
But yes, ask. Just get help from people, get feedback. Feedback is like the best thing you can do, especially as a musician, being vulnerable to, getting better.
Yeah, there's some fantastic Facebook groups out there. There's the Game Audio Denizens. There's Business Skills for Composers.
Yes,
if you want to think
very
business
useful.
stuff, which is important.
Yes.
There's Game Audio Self-Promotion, which is kind of cool if you like to hear what other people are doing. That sort of thing.
The Game Audio Network Guild.
Another
Yes.
excellent organization.
Materia Collective.
It's okay, I guess.
Okay, so we're gonna open the floor to maybe like 3 to 5 questions. So if you got any questions, now is the time to do it.
Yes, please. Questions? Yes.
Sir, you can ask any of us.
So I guess this is kind of, I'd like to go over about this, but do you have any advice in addition to that to somebody that basically just wants to be an internet session musician?
Yeah, join the Materia Collective. Get to know a lot of other people in the organization, like me, etc. And then I will connect you with other people when they want your skills. No, but it's things like that. There are actually there's also a few other organizations out there, and there's at least one, and I don't remember. I'm sorry, I'm a bad person. There's at least one like. There's no. There's there's a website that is like basically online like session musicians that someone put together where you could just like put your information in, like demos of your playing and like description of your recording setup. And that's super useful. I put stuff in there and I've gotten people reach out to me. But a lot of it is like playing on stuff and then word of mouth recommendations. I've gotten more composition work from other composers recommending me and more recording for other people work from other composers who I've played for in the past. It's super, super useful.
So about this topic is actually really funny to me because like when you go to any event with game developers in it, there's probably about 1 billion composers for every game developer. So if you want to be an internet session musician, go to a game developer conference of sorts, because chances are you're going to run into like 1 billion composers, and if you want to play horn for them, they might need you in some point in the future. Like it's just there's more composers than there are a lot of things.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Very wonderful person in the back of the room here. Don't look now, but Kristen Negus is here, and she is
I wasn't going to say anything,
the
but
greatest oboist in the world, scientifically proven. But she's wonderful, and she's got this down. She goes to like Game SoundCon and GDC, and like mingles and hangs out with the composers, and we're all nerds, and we're like, oh cool, who's this fashionable like wonderful woman here? Oh, she plays oboe. Oh, she's played on Austin Wintory's scores. Oh, really?
Exactly.
Who is this? Can I have your card? And there you go. You're in.
Yeah, that's it. Make friends and show off your skills, but be available, basically. Okay, another question.
He was. Oh, sorry. Go.
Oh, okay. Ashley has something to add.
I actually have a good one for you. Not necessarily. It can be as a session musician because you can do small compositions as well. Something I would highly recommend is get involved in game jams.
Yes.
There are a lot of composers out there that write music, and if you want to write music for games, don't write music in a vacuum. Go to where the games are being made. Make friends.
And there's the global game jam is happening in
like a couple of weeks.
In a few weeks. So look it up. Global game jam. That's like a global thing. It's like a game jam for everyone in the world.
It's like a global game. It's like a game jam for the globe. For the world. All right.
Okay. Any other questions?
Back here.
Okay. Mason.
2 questions. Honestly, I'll just go with 1 question at a time. This is actually for Diwa. So you mentioned micro-niches. That's a really relevant thing.
Yeah.
Could you tell us real fast what you have defined for your micro-niche for string player gamers?
Okay.
And if you had to predict what you would define it would be for the 3 people who are on the table.
Okay. There's actually a very good music business podcaster that I listen to named Leah McHenry, and she's a musician that she does metal, and her genre is metal. Her micro niche is Celtic metal, and her niche is Celtic metal, and her micro niche is like female-fronted Celtic metal. I would say for myself, my main genre is, I would say VGM, video game music. and under that, metal, symphonic metal, and then right under that, the tiniest is violin-led symphonic metal, because I'm an instrumental symphonic metal cover artist. So everything is like in an electric violin. So that's it. You have a main genre like something like rock, and then under that you can have like folk rock, and then folk rock. Under folk rock is maybe political folk rock, something like that.
Okay, stop dodging the second question.
Yeah, and then there's for example, John has a group called the Game Brass. Maybe you've heard of them. They do VGM, chamber brass, and then I would say VGM, and then chamber music, and then brass chamber music. That is their micro niche, something like that. And Ashley, from what I hear of you, you're doing VGM, electronic VGM, and then maybe chill electronic VGM, something like that.
Vaporwave.
That's a really good.
See?
I was gonna say it's a very.
I researched this, you know.
It's a very good guess. I would personally say that actually my broader one right now is synthwave, and then EDM chiptunes kind of on the same level.
There you go.
And then VGM is
chiptunes
my
itself,
micro. VGM and being a female producer apparently is my micro niche.
There you go. Questions, sir?
For me, it's basically like, what is the mindset to go when you take commission? Like, I show you like an artwork of mine. Basically, what your thoughts are on like how that sounds and stuff, apart from description and stuff.
Can I do this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So when I'm given a new piece, a new project to work on, ideally I want to get as much information as I can about the world. So for a new game, I'll say like, what is the setting? Is this like a high fantasy thing? Is this like low fantasy? Are we like, is this like Game of Thrones, or is this like Lord of the Rings? Like there actually is a notable difference between those, and a kind of a gulf. Is this like sci-fi? Like, is this science fantasy like Star Wars? Like, what does this feel like? And so I try to get an idea of what the world is like. Is it more primitive? Is it more like refined? And like what does it sound like? And I kind of like come up with an orchestral palette that matches that. So working on a game that released earlier this year called, so it's not this year, it's last year. Last year called For the King. And it is a turn-based, thank you. A few people have played it, yay. It's a turn-based RPG on like a big, basically almost like a tabletop board. But the world itself is kind of like throwback, kind of a little classic fantasy, but a little bit like a little gritty in some ways. And so one of the ideas we had very early on was that we're going to have this sound for the world that was going to be basically you were being accompanied by a band of bards at all times. And so like there would be big orchestral stuff, but like the primary instruments would be like things that you could carry. So like flutes and like light woodwinds and like string instruments and hurdy-gurdy and like small drums, like, you know, tambourines, things like that could be carried with you. And so that was the primary sound that we had. And then like that expanded out to be, you know, big orchestral stuff for big bombastic things, but then a small ensemble by themselves, oh no, big orchestral stuff, and kind of this contrast between these two different sounds. And then like the tone of the thing is like, oh, the king is dead. The king is dead, and the entire land is being turned over to chaos, and everything is terrible. And people are being, like, towns are being subsumed by the earth, and the forces of chaos are running amok. And so this is like this storied land, but things are bleak. And so the first bit of stuff I worked on for it was this trailer, which was kind of a riff on who here has ever seen like the famous like Dead Island trailer that happens in reverse? Okay, cool. So it's like a tour de force in like tone and setting in one beautiful thing. It has nothing to do with the actual game, but it's super neat. We basically did that like in ours. So we start off, it's a party of 3 people, and we start off with this fight between the kind of fighter character, and then like she dies at the very beginning of this thing, and then we rewind and she's entering this cave, and then like there's an archer, and the archer is with her, and they're fighting, and the archer dies, and then we cut back a bit further, and the music keeps growing and getting bigger and grander until like all 3 of the party are there, and there's a horrible battle against a kraken at sea, and the wizard dies. He doesn't wash up on shore, and we're kind of like seeing the music getting bigger and grander as we're going back to when they're like bold and emboldened by the beginning of this journey. Everything's going to be great, but it starts off and it's so lonely and it's so sad because the emotional content of the thing tells you that. So you read the story, you look at what the images are telling you, and kind of channel that into music. And for me, that's like I'll look at a script or I'll read lines and I'll hear things in my head and then I record them on my phone and I sing them badly. Actually, I sing them very well, thank you. No, and then it gets turned into something. That's how I do that.
It's very moving. We got time for one last question. Sir.
What do you guys use to organize your sound libraries or templates?
E-Man, you can take this one, I think.
Oh my gosh. Sound libraries, it's just, I keep them in folders that tell me exactly what I'm looking for. Like a lot of my sounds just generally are blunt, like knife hit or knife on metal, knife 8 inches this, I just try to keep it as detailed in that metadata as possible in the name, so that way I can just search it and it'll, pop up. There are great softwares out there, I can't name them because I don't use them. That actually do, that kind of thing in it where you can just label everything, drop a sound in and say, this is everything that I want to associate with the sound.
Soundminer and stuff like that?
Yeah, exact. Soundbinder?
Soundminer?
Soundminer, yes, that's actually it. Soundminer is the one that a lot of companies actually use. Regarding that, it's fantastic for organizing stuff, but again, I don't use it because I'm not in the position to pay for it at this point because I think it's one of the subscription-based.
Yeah, it's a very pricey thing. You want to, if you're like,
you want to be a good AAA, in-house sound design team for that kind of thing. But just keeping everything labeled well and just knowing what you have in stock helps because a lot of the sounds I've been doing over the last year, are fresh in my mind, so I know what I have. But say somebody that builds something up over 10 years, they would probably be using something along the lines of Soundminer.
Yeah, that's all the time we have for tonight. So thank you very much, guys, for attending. Thank you, Emmanuel Agumbay, Ashley Lynn Watts, aka Sonic Buster, John Robert Matz, and myself, Diwa De Leon, aka String Player Gamer. If you have any questions or follow-up questions, you can follow us on our Twitter handles. Or if you have burning questions that you can't wait to ask, you can approach us right now, and you can also take a selfie with us. So we're okay with that.
Oh, yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, and enjoy the rest of.